Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast. We have our answer at quarterback. Maybe. I don't know. But the Giants signed Jameis Winston for 2 years and $8 million. Could be worth up to $16 million in incentives. I'm sure that has to deal with like playing time and how many touchdown passes do you have? Do you make the playoffs? And stuff like that. There were also some other smaller signings at the wide receiver position. Lil Jordan Humphrey, and I just saw this morning Zach Pascal got signed. He's more of a special teams guy, but he might get some wide receiver snaps. He's had some decent games throughout his career. But I do mainly want to talk about Jameis Winston. A bit of a surprise, of course. The Giants were pretty much all in on Stafford. That didn't work out. All in on Rodgers. It seems like he wants Pittsburgh. He spent 6 hours at their facility yesterday, or maybe that was 2 days ago. Then they interviewed Flacco, interviewed Russell Wilson. Not interviewed, but they had a visit with those guys. And we heard some rumblings about Jameis Winston, but the deal gets done last night, Friday night. So, hey, Jameis Winston, a New York Giant. And if you've followed me for a while on Twitter, you know that I've been asking for the Giants to sign Jameis Winston since this was March 2nd of 2021. And a few other offseason cycles when Jameis Winston's name got thrown out there, I'm like, can the Giants please get Jameis? Please get Jameis. Like, this is the right guy. You have Daniel Jones at that time who was very over-conservative. Like, why not get somebody on the other side of the spectrum who was going to push the ball down the field and at least was a respectable competition for Daniel Jones at that time? But now there seems to be no competition for Jameis Winston. The only other quarterback on the roster, of course, is Tommy DeVito. I'm taking Jameis Winston every single day. Of course, Jameis can have a similar situation as last year where he gets too interception prone and then gets benched. There is still a lot to be answered about this quarterback position. We'll learn a lot more in late April when the draft comes around, but apparently the Giants are still not completely out on Russell Wilson. That's according to Jeremy Fowler on ESPN. I saw this tweet from WBG84 this morning saying that Russell Wilson is still in the mix for the Giants even after signing Jameis Winston. Fowler also said that his sense is that the Giants could sign 2 free agent quarterbacks and still draft one. So after last year and the Giants and Joe Shane being heavily criticized for their underwhelming quarterback room, it seems like they want to do a 180 this time around, which I think makes a ton of sense. Like last year, it's Daniel Jones off of ACL, 2 neck injuries. It's Drew Lock, who, okay, like I like Drew Lock, but he's Drew Lock. We know his deficiencies. And then you had Tommy DeVito. You let Tyrod Taylor walk to the Jets. I'm sure Tyrod didn't want to be back anyway. But it was an underwhelming quarterback room. And now, a year later, you're looking at Jameis Winston, a proven guy. You know what you're getting. Well, you don't know what you're getting because Jameis one week looks like a top 5 quarterback and the next week looks unplayable. So I can't say you know what you're getting, but you're getting a much more talented quarterback in Jameis Winston over Drew Lock. And then the starting quarterback, which it could end up being Jameis, but you also have a chance to possibly get, I think Cam Ward's out of the mix. I think he's going first overall, sadly, but you still have a chance to get Shedeur Sanders. There is a chance for Jackson Dart. We saw Milroe run a 4.3 40 or something, so he could be in the mix. I'm not sure. And then there's also the possibility that, as the Fowler tweet said, or Fowler on ESPN said, that they might still sign Russell Wilson. I still think Aaron Rodgers, that thing is over. I think he wants to be a Steeler. I'm not sure why it's still going on. It should be done by now, but maybe it's a financial thing. Maybe Rodgers wants to just drag it out, which is definitely possible. And sure, I'm sad to a degree because I wanted Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, you do want somebody who wants to be here. You don't want somebody to like kind of be forced to be a Giant. And I'm sure Jameis Winston is going to embrace it. I'm sure he wants to be here. I already saw a tweet from the Real Housewives of East Rutherford. They put out a tweet of Jameis Winston interviewing Shedeur Sanders, and then you have Deion Sanders just cheesing in the background, just smiling with his sunglasses on. So maybe a bit of a foreshadow, we'll see, but that would be very interesting. Like, talk about a 180, like the Giants going from like these vanilla white quarterbacks to a Jameis Winston, Shedeur Sanders quarterback room in one offseason would be pretty insane, but I'm here for it. I think that'd be really fun. I do like Shedeur Sanders. I've said that 1,000 times now. I would be totally happy if the Giants took him 3rd overall. And I think if the draft goes like it's supposed to, where it's, well, not supposed to, but people have speculated where it's Cam Ward 1st overall, maybe Abdul Carter 2nd overall. If Shedeur Sanders went 2nd overall, it's a moot point, but let's say Carter went 2nd overall. If you're left between Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, yes, I think Hunter is tremendous. I prefer him at cornerback. I think his instincts and athleticism are off the chart. The ball skills are off the chart, obviously. You can play him maybe 15, 20 snaps at wide receiver. But ultimately, I would take Shedeur Sanders. That could be a very cold take in a few years, but that's how I would go about it. With Jameis Winston, you're getting a much different approach from what the Giants have had in years past. Like last year, Daniel Jones in average depth of target was 31st in the NFL, 7.5 air yards per target. Jameis Winston, third in the NFL in ADOT, 9.7 air yards per target. So Jameis Winston will push the ball down the field. It does end up in turnovers pretty often, but you get the very high-end plays and you do get the very low-end plays. But I think for Giants fans, after watching such conservative football over the past few years, I think we'll be fine with it. Jameis last year had 13 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. He had some very good games last year. There was that win against Baltimore in week number 8 that nobody saw coming. He had that comeback, 334 yards, 3-touchdown game. Then the next week against the Chargers, they lose by 17 points and he has 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Like, that is what he does. They had that primetime loss at Denver where Jameis gave you the full experience, almost 500 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, but 3 interceptions in a losing effort. And the final game he started before getting benched and made inactive the final 3 games was 146 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions against the Kansas City Chiefs, which of course they had a great defense, so it happens. The weapons in Cleveland were not tremendous. I know Njoku missed time at the end of last year when Jameis was playing. Cedric Tillman missed a lot of time with a concussion. He did have Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Akins, of course Njoku and Cedric Tillman were there sometimes. I know during that Baltimore win, that big win he had in I think that was his first start last year, he did have Cedric Tillman for that game and Tillman had a great breakout performance. So with Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson and whoever else, Darius Slayton and these other guys, little Jordan Humphrey, Zach Pascal, Jalen Hyatt, if he even is there. I don't even know what the situation is with him. But maybe we do see some better results with those type of receivers. And I love Kevin Stefanski, so I can't even say going from Stefanski to Dable is that much of a scheme upgrade, but maybe it is. Things are different in every system basically, so we'll see if things are a bit different for Jameis, but I do ultimately think we know what we're getting here. Was I pretty shocked to see they went Jameis over Russell Wilson basically? Yeah, because apparently Russell Wilson was ready to sign with the Giants. And as I told you guys maybe last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, I've heard the rumors that Russell Wilson sometimes is a pain in the ass to work with. I'm not saying he's a bad teammate, not saying he's a locker room cancer, none of that, but apparently he likes things done a certain way and it could drive some organizations crazy. So that could be a part of it. Jameis Winston, although he's had some things come up in his past that aren't too great, Jameis at this point in his career seems like an easygoing, very good vibes, very funny type of guy. We did have the crab legs incident where he stole some crab legs back in college. We saw he was suspended for 3 games, and I think that was 2018 for groping an Uber driver. Apparently there was a sexual assault lawsuit back in 2012. I think Florida State had to pay the girl $1 million basically. So there was some stuff in his past that is not great, but I feel like Jameis, ever since the Uber driver thing, he's been pretty clean, so I'm not too concerned about it. People change, and he seems to be a man of faith now if you watch his interviews, and there will be some elite Jameis interviews. There will be some great mic'd up moments. I saw a video today of him mic'd up where he was trying to draw the defense off sides, and he's doing his fake hut, and nobody was moving. And after a while, he was like, "God damn, can you guys jump off sides?" Or I don't think he said "God damn." He probably wouldn't say "God damn," but you get what I mean. It was just funny the way he said it. And in terms of scheme fit, I do kind of like Jameis for the Brian Dable scheme. I think it does make some sense. He's a guy who can go on the move and make throws on the run, which is, something we saw with Daniel Jones back in 2022 when this Dable offense was really cooking. And of course, Josh Allen back in Buffalo. I mean, that's not really something you can replicate, but of course, he made a ton of throws on the run. And Jameis does have some rushing ability. His career high in rushing yards per game was 25.5. That was back in 2018. And in rushing yards per game last year, it was 6.9. So it's nothing great, but he can run if he has to. He's a guy who, even when he steps up in the pocket, his eyes are always downfield. I do like that. He holds the ball high and keeps his eyes downfield. And if he thinks it's a 50-50 chance, even for Jameis, it might be 40-60, he'll take that shot more times than not, which for a guy like Neighbors, who is a great one-on-one receiver, give those guys a chance. I don't see why not. I mentioned Elijah Moore before. I think that'd be a great signing for the Giants, but like I think they probably are a bit too cap strapped for that one now, and they have enough receivers. But it did seem like Elijah Moore and Jameis Winston had a really good connection. But if you're the Giants, I don't think you want to build your team around Jameis Winston at this point. That would be kind of ludicrous. For Lil Jordan Humphrey, an undrafted free agent. I actually did not know that until just now. So he's 6'4", 225. He's had some nice games throughout his career. He's already 27 years old. He played with the Saints for 3 years, went to the Patriots in 2022, Denver the past 2 years. He's also had some special team snaps throughout his career. He did play a lot of special teams back in 2021, 2022 with the Patriots. He had 24 special team snaps, so he can do that if he needs to, but I think Zach Pascal is more of a guy who is signed to do that. Last year in a game versus Atlanta, it was a blowout. I remember that game, but Lil Jordan Humphrey had 4 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. 2023, a game against the Chargers, he had 2 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown. So he'll do his thing once in a while, but for the most part, he's just a bigger guy, going to play on the outside. If he catches a deep ball, that's great. I feel like maybe it's some Darius Slayton insurance if he ever goes down, but aside from that, I'm not expecting a whole lot. It'd be great if he broke out with this team, but I just can't see it. For Zach Pascal, I mean, there's more of a chance he does something. He's now 30 years old, but he's been around for a while, played with the Colts for 4 years, went to Philly in 2022, Arizona the past 2 years. Did not record a catch last year, so don't love seeing that, but at one point he was a decent receiver. He had back-to-back 600-yard years with the Colts in 2019 and 2020. He's a guy who could be a good possession receiver, 6'2", 215. He did have 5 touchdowns in consecutive years back in 2019, 2020, so he's been used less as a receiver lately, but overall, like, he's fine. He did have a 86.4 special teams grade by PFF last year for the Cardinals, and 277 total special team snaps, so that's good. He had a 72 grade the year before that, 66 before that, so ever since 2021 when he left the Colts, I feel like the Colts treated him like a wide receiver, but ever since he left the Colts and went to Philly and Arizona, they've treated him like a special teams player first, receiver second, but apparently based on the grades in that role, he's been doing a good job. He had 6 special teams tackles back in 2022, and the Giants wide receiver room is a bit crowded now, but as I said, the last 2 guys, they might be special teamers. You have Malik Neighbors, you have Wandale, Darius Slayton, you have Jalen Hyatt. Once again, maybe he might be traded or something. I have no idea. Lil Jordan Humphrey, Amir Smith-Marset, he was a good kick returner last year. Zach Pascal, Bryce Ford-Wheaton, who now is very much on the roster bubble with these 2 guys brought in. Montrell Washington, I can't say I know who that is. He was a 5th-round pick by Denver back in 2022. I don't remember watching this guy play, I'm not going to lie. The funny part is with Jameis, though, he's actually the only offensive starter the Giants have signed so far, and like this was a Giants team that I think was last in the NFL in offense, so for them to kind of ignore the offense the way they did is pretty crazy. Of course, they really bolstered their defense, and that's great to see. And I did see the Jordan Raanan recent podcast, and he mentioned that the Giants are kind of following a very similar offseason plan to what John Mara said during his end-of-season interview, where Mara said that the main things he cared about with this team and what bothered him was the defense, and the Giants went out and spent big money on defense. He mentioned, I think, offensive line depth, and then he mentioned quarterback as the most important, obviously. So far it's been Jameis, but as I said, they've been trying to get Stafford and Rodgers and Russ and whoever, and maybe Shedeur Sanders in April. But overall, I think it's been a pretty good offseason for the Giants. I actually didn't mention the last time I talked to you guys, this hasn't happened yet, but Greg Van Roten's back. So like the Giants have had good offensive line depth once again. So to get Stone Forsythe and James Hudson, not the best players of course, but guys that have played starting snaps in the NFL and can be some swing tackles if you need. But to get Greg Van Roten back, I do like that. I would prefer somebody else at right guard, but at worst, that can be a possibility. Maybe they do plan to try Evan Neal at right guard, and maybe it goes great, maybe it doesn't, and then in the event it doesn't go great, you have GVR as a backup. Defensively, it's coming in nicely. Of course, you know, I'm looking at the depth chart right now. It looks pretty good, especially if Kayvon Thibodeau can finally break out. Like, this defense has a chance to be elite, but you have to have at least a a average offense. You can't just rely on your defense to hold teams to 14, 17 points every week. They have to put up points, and with Jameis Winston at the helm, they'll probably put up some points, but you have to think about him putting the defense in some not so ideal situations as well. So this is what I would like to see, and I think it depends obviously what happens with the Browns at number 2. So once again, I think Cam Ward goes first overall. So if you had that dream, I hate to break it to you, but it's probably not going to happen. So I think Cam Ward goes first. If Abdul Carter goes second, I'm taking Shedeur Sanders, no doubt about it. But if Shedeur Sanders goes second overall and the Giants miss out for not tanking against the Colts like they should have, then at that point, I believe signing Russell Wilson makes the most sense. Now, will Russell Wilson wait another month, basically 5 weeks, to wait for an offseason decision? Maybe, but I feel like Russell Wilson would rather get things done. He's already been on like 2 interviews with teams or 2 visits with the Browns, who the Browns have yet to address quarterback for the most part. They got Kenny Pickett, like, okay. I feel like Kenny Pickett's not great, especially in that weather. I feel like Kenny Pickett's a guy, you have the smaller hands, not great arm. You don't want him playing outdoors in Cleveland, but that's who they have. And aside from that, there's nobody else on their roster besides Deshaun Watson, who I don't think plays next year anyway. So Cleveland, they can be a Russell Wilson team, especially with the Jameis thing. Maybe Russ says, well, F you guys, I'm going to Cleveland. So I could see that happening. And if it did, then that's probably good for us, because maybe that's less of a chance they take Shedeur. Now, if you don't want Shedeur, then you're probably hoping that the Browns don't get Russell Wilson. And of course, there's always a possibility that with the Stefanski and Kirk Cousins relationship, which I did say in my last video about Kirk Cousins and him making a ton of money, but I could see Kirk Cousins going to the Browns if there was a cheap trade out there for him, which I'm sure the Browns don't want to take much at all of that Kirk Cousins contract. They can't really afford it. So I think the Browns' hope is that Kirk Cousins gets released by the Falcons, which at this point, why would they? They already took on that roster bonus of $10 million or whatever the hell that thing was. So it's like, why release Cousins now if it gets a little too muddy and Kirk Cousins is really pissed off, which I can't see that being the case. I feel like Kirk would not be the type of guy to do that. But if it does happen, I could see Kirk going to the Browns on a very cheap 1-year, $1 or $2 million deal like Russell Wilson did with the Steelers last year. But as I said, Kirk Cousins is a big-time bag getter. So, maybe he does go out and get some more money. Who knows? So that'll do it. We'll see what the rumors are saying about the draft. I've seen a ton of Shedeur going to Cleveland rumors lately. Don't love that, but we'll see how it goes. I'm not going to try and freak out about it. We're going to find out in a little over a month here. I'm sure I'll have another Giants video before the draft, maybe a mock draft or just going over some rumors. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments which you prefer. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know, do you like the Jameis Winston signing? And I'll talk to you guys next time.